Once upon a time, a handful of movie studios ruled the world, not just Hollywood. This is the story of how the titans of old Hollywood rose to unimaginable power, and how they lost it all. Let's start with MGM, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. In the 1930s and 40s, MGM was powerhouse. Their slogan, "More stars than there are in heaven," and they meant it. Clark Gable, Judy Garland, Greta Garbo, Spencer Tracy. The studio didn't just employ stars, it owned them, literally. MGM controlled every role, every photo, every public appearance. They crafted their images, dictated their romances, even chose their friends. MGM churned out hit after hit. Gone with the Wind, The Wizard of Oz, Singin' in the Rain. These weren't just movies, they were events. But even the brightest stars fade. By the 1950s, a new flicker captured America's attention: the television. Ticket sales dwindled. Studios panicked. The studio that once seemed too big to fail, now staggered under the weight of its own extravagance. By the late 1980s, MGM was sold off, piece by piece. Before MGM's reign, there was Paramount. Founded in 1912, it became the first major studio with a nationwide theater chain. Paramount, with its mountaintop logo, became synonymous with a certain kind of Hollywood glamour. Sunset Boulevard, The Godfather, Indiana Jones, all Paramount creations. But Paramount had a fatal flaw. It played the game too well. It dominated the industry, controlling every aspect of production and distribution. In 1948, the US government struck at the heart of Hollywood with the Paramount Decree. This landmark antitrust case forced studios to sell their theater chains. Paramount, once the undisputed king of the mountain, found itself on the losing side of history. By the time the 1960s rolled around, Paramount was hemorrhaging cash. Ownership changed hands repeatedly. The brand, that iconic mountaintop logo, still survives. But the empire, that once mighty fortress, was fractured beyond recognition. A cautionary tale of the fleeting nature of power. Now let's talk about Warner Brothers, the scrappy studio that gave us the first talkie, The Jazz Singer. The Jazz Singer was a revolution, ushering in the era of talking pictures. Warner Brothers, once a small-time player, catapulted to Hollywood royalty. They specialized in gritty, working-class stories, gangsters, anti-heroes, and hard-boiled drama. Humphrey Bogart, James Cagney, Bette Davis, these were the faces of a new kind of Hollywood. They gave us films like The Public Enemy, Little Caesar, and The Maltese Falcon. But as time marched on, so too did the industry. By the 1970s, Warner Brothers found itself in need of a lifeline. It came in the form of a merger with Kinney National. In 1989, Warner Brothers was acquired by Time Inc. The creative pulse was still there. The Matrix, Harry Potter. But the old Warner Brothers magic, the gritty realism, the willingness to take risks, seemed to fade. The studio that had once been a rebel, a disruptor, had become safe. Chapter 4, RKO, a legacy forged in audacity. RKO Pictures. Perhaps not the biggest player in the Hollywood game, but pound for pound, they were contenders. RKO was a studio built on risk. They gave us Citizen Kane, Orson Welles' masterpiece. And then there was King Kong, a monster movie that transcended its genre. Let's not forget Bringing Up Baby, a screwball comedy starring Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant. But this boldness came at a price. The studio was plagued by financial mismanagement and executive feuds. Howard Hughes acquired RKO in the 1940s. Hughes' obsession with control stifled RKO's creative spirit. By 1957, RKO was finished, sold off, and dismantled. Chapter 5, 20th Century Fox, a legacy eclipsed. 20th Century Fox. The studio that brought us elegance, edge, and epic scale. They gave us Cleopatra, a historical epic that nearly bankrupted the studio. And who could forget Star Wars? A space opera that captured the imaginations of a generation. 20th Century Fox helped to cultivate Marilyn Monroe's image. But behind the glitz and glamour lurked chaos. Cleopatra nearly bankrupted the studio in the 1960s. They survived Cleopatra, only to find themselves struggling in the 1970s. Then came Star Wars. The film's unprecedented success breathed new life into the struggling studio. But even the Force couldn't save Fox forever. In 2019, Disney acquired 20th Century Fox. Today it exists as 20th Century Studios, a subsidiary of the Walt Disney Company. Chapter 6. The Dream Machine Breaks Down. What brought about the end of the studio system? It wasn't one single event, but a confluence of factors. Television played a significant role. Movie attendance declined, and studios struggled to compete. The Paramount decree forced studios to divest their theater chains. Audiences were changing. The rise of youth culture in the 1960s created a demand for films that reflected their experiences. Studios, slow to recognize this shift, found themselves out of touch. Unbridled ambition led to a string of costly misfires. The collapse was a slow, gradual process of erosion. Actors demanded more creative control and a greater share of the profits. Agents became powerful players. Directors sought greater autonomy. The old studio system couldn't contain these forces. What remains are the names, the logos, the films. But the world those studios created is gone. Chapter 7. The Legacy of Dreams. Old Hollywood was a dream machine. It churned out fantasies, romances, adventures, and nightmares. But even dream machines break down. The dreams themselves, those endure.